inspect it. And because of that, we've been able to correlate our models pre-flight to what actually happens when you launch, re-enter, and land a rocket.
Right, instead of just guessing what happened to the vehicle after it's left.
Exactly.
That is amazing. Well, thank you again for joining us today for a second round. Hopefully the weather works with us today in a couple hours, actually. Let's throw it back to KSC with Marie.
All right, actually we have Lauren here. Now today's mission
instead of
opens
just
up
guessing
the door to one day, allowing the general public to be able to visit places like the moon and Mars. And as you've heard through several interviews today, reusability is a really, really important part of that. Imagine if every time you flew a plane from LA to New York, you threw it away at the end of the flight. That would mean essentially airline travel would be too expensive, costing hundreds of millions of dollars a flight, and almost no one would be able to fly. And so that's what SpaceX is trying to do here with reuse, allowing not just a handful of people to be able to go to space, but tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of regular folks like you and me to be able to go to space. So, myself, when people like me have a chance to go, I know my dream is to land on Jupiter's moon, Europa. Scientists believe that there is a liquid water ocean underneath the ice and that it has the potential to be habitable. And so I'm super excited to get up close and personal to maybe some space fish. Leland, what about you? Where would you go?
Wow, that's a pretty interesting destination. I think I would like to go to Mars. We've studied Mars so much and looked at it, and I think maybe having a Martian base that is dog friendly, bring the pups along, because I think as we explore, we want to take our families, our cultures, our traditions, with us, and flying with Doug and Bob is cool, but having more people,
There's the dogs.
The puppers,
love
taking
the
the
dogs.
puppers to space. I mean, they're not.
They look ready to go.
They are ready to go. We just needed maybe some like SpaceX type suits for them, But it's that's what it's all about, exploration. Like the settlers going the west, they took everything with them, and they started these new communities and these new traditions. And I think that's what we do with space travel. We start new traditions and communities and bring everyone together as one family, one civilization.
Absolutely. We're here for it. And knowing that the opportunity to fly to space as a private citizen is really just right around the corner, we have a new poll question on Twitter for you. If given the opportunity to fly to the moon, now we're talking the moon, would you fly to the South Pole where no one has ever been, or would you go to the Apollo 11 landing site? So those are going to be some interesting answers.
And while there is not a ton of cargo on today's mission, Dragon is carrying two very special payloads, aside from Bob and Doug, of course. The first of those payloads is a series of custom art pieces entitled Humankind by Los Angeles artist Tristan Eaton. These indestructible, double-sided paintings made from gold, brass, and aluminum celebrate how far humanity has come, as well as how far we still have to go. It includes a beautiful homage to the Saturn V rocket, as well as a nod to Bob and Doug's current ride to space. And you can find more images and information about these pieces on SpaceX's social channels. Next, in the spirit of inspiring the next generation of explorers, we wanted to celebrate the class of 2020, from kindergarten all the way to graduate school. So SpaceX and NASA invited students from around the world to submit their photo to fly on America's first human spaceflight in nearly a decade. Each graduate's photo was used to create a mosaic image of our beautiful planet Earth, which we printed, and it's now being flown aboard Bob and Doug's flight on the Crew Dragon spacecraft. We received nearly 100,000 photos. That's a ton, so thank you, and congratulations, graduates.
Yeah, I've got a couple of family members and friends who submitted their photos, so they're super excited about seeing their faces go to space in that beautiful mosaic. That was really cool.
And again, that's what it's all about, everyone coming together with their experiences and bringing them forward to space. And I think regular people flying to space, SpaceX is going to be flying, non-government people, non-military people, but people that have a desire to explore and do new things and traditions off planet, as we say sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, all this time since we've had the International Space Station, it's been government astronauts performing the research because you're the only ones we've been able to send, right? But
Well, we've
I mean,
had some tourists, though. We've had people that paid their way on a Soyuz rocket
sure,
to
sure.
go. But it's really the billionaire boys club. That's what Pharrell talks about with, it costs so much money to go to
Right.
space. And I think that price point will come down as we make this more amenable for everyday people.
Absolutely.
And eventually being able to fly artists and musicians
Yeah.
and poets, people who can tell the story of what they've seen out there in a way that really connects to the soul of people down on Earth, so they feel inspired to go.
Exactly.
Now, following today's mission, we will be one step closer to a future where we can all have that opportunity to gain the orbital perspective and explore new worlds. In just over an hour from now, Bob and Doug will be the first people to launch on an American vehicle in almost a decade. And for the SpaceX team, if I can try to speak for all of us, which is impossible, but I will say it has been an absolute honor to have the opportunity today to have this stage to show the world what we've poured our hearts into over the years with our partners at NASA. And it's just deeply humbling to know that the agency and that Bob and Doug have entrusted us with this critical mission. The responsibility that's on our shoulders is huge, and we're just so grateful to be here today.
Absolutely, and I know that our NASA teams really share in that sentiment. We heard from just a handful of them earlier when Bob and Doug were riding out to the launch pad. But there's so many people that we're probably never going to see or hear from on the public stage, but that have poured their hearts and souls, as you said, into this mission. All the engineers up late hours checking, checking, triple checking everything to troubleshoot and solve problems and get us to this point. So it's just really awesome that we've made it to this point.
When you think about legacy, Katherine Johnson, who helped get John Glenn to space, her daughters are watching right now. And that legacy going forward to the future of space travel is powerful.
Wow.
And we heard from two icons of science and exploration on Wednesday, and we couldn't resist sharing these shout outs with you one more time.
Wow, we're making history again. The NASA program. I'm there with you guys in spirit. Bob, Doug, good luck. I know you'll be fine. I'll be watching and got everything crossed, arms, legs. I'm tied in a knot. Can't wait for you to get back safely.
This is the first time a U.S.-built rocket has taken people into space in 9 years. It's quite an accomplishment. So for us at the Planetary Society, more rockets means more exploration. More people in space means more exploration. More countries involved in the endeavor of spaceflight means more exploration. This is how we know the cosmos and our place within it. So congratulations, SpaceX. Here's wishing your team, and the crew especially, a safe journey and the joy of discovery. Let's go.
So great to hear from William Shatner and Bill Nye, two very recognizable faces following along on the mission.
Yeah.
And we want to go over to Dan and Jesse in Hawthorne, where we are now just 1 hour and 18 minutes from launch. Dan, Jesse?
Hey, thanks, Marie. Yeah, 1 hour, 18 minutes. I think we're tying ourselves in knots, just like Captain Kirk. We're really hoping the weather cooperates. In about 20 minutes or so, we might clear. So we're getting hopeful. We're getting our hopes up.
Yes. Very excited. Again, we're T-minus 1 hour and 18 minutes from launch, and the anticipation is real over here. Since arriving at the spacecraft, Bob and Doug were helped by our closeout engineers to get into their seats, attach their suits to special umbilicals that provide breathing air, pressurized nitrox, and a communications link to Dragon systems. They conducted leak checks, which were successful, and communications checks with the core here in Hawthorne, which is the person who will speak to them directly throughout the mission, as well as the launch director in Florida. This is where they are checking their comm path through both ground stations and the tracking and data relay satellites that we'll use to talk to the crew the entire way to the station.
And after all of those suit leak checks were successful, the closeout team was able to get out of the Dragon capsule and seal up that hatch, which also got its own leak check and was confirmed successful. At this point, the closeout team is out of the pad. They're away from the BDA, the blast danger area, and weather operators are about to kick off their final checks on wind speeds at the pad, which are going to be used during the final go, no go for launch. So we're all keeping eyes on the weather right now. Before we get to that final go, no go, all the various teams at both NASA and SpaceX are going to do internal go polls, just making sure conditions are right with Falcon 9, the Dragon, the crew, the range, and the space station before the final go is given. So let's check back in with the man over in Houston, Gary, for a status on the team supporting the space station for their readiness for launch.
Thanks, Dan. The team here in Mission Control Houston remains go for launch. We're also very hopeful about that weather. All systems on board the station that are required to be healthy for this mission are continuing to look good. Chris Cassidy is wrapping up his workday, and we'll be watching Bob and Doug launch here in just under an hour. So station power and communication systems are normal. Computers and networks used for monitoring Dragon's approach have been checked out, and the cabins and the station cabin's atmosphere and pressure are as expected and ready to welcome 2 new crew members aboard. Mission Control will be closely monitoring Bob and Doug's flight and checking off milestones for most of the flight, and this very same team will be coming back tomorrow to be ready when Dragon gets in range of the International Space Station and we begin integrated operations and prepare for Dragon's docking. So I'll send it back. International Space Station team here is ready for launch. Go Falcon 9, go Dragon, and Godspeed to Bob and Doug.
All right, thanks, Gary. If you are just now joining us, you picked a really good time. We're just a little over an hour to launch. And welcome to our coverage for the mission known as Demonstration Mission 2, or Demo 2. Liftoff time still holding for 3:22 p.m. Eastern. Tracking no issues with Falcon 9 or Dragon. Everything good with the range so far. We're just really keeping an eye on that weather. Over the last 3 hours, our crew members, Doug Hurley and Bob Bankin, donned their SpaceX suits in the historic crew quarters suit-up room. After that, they walked out of crew quarters, just as every astronaut to fly from space from this port has done since Apollo 7. And then they were transported over to the pad, where the crew members entered the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft that we're looking in live.
Today is a historic launch. It will be the first time a commercially built spacecraft will launch people into orbit, and the first time the U.S. has sent people to the space station from American soil since 2011 with the retirement of the Space Shuttle program. Over the next hour, we will conduct a series of polls to get ready for launch, have Bob and Doug arm the launch escape system, and begin fueling Falcon 9. Launch is set for 3:22 p.m. Eastern. This will include a 12-minute flight to orbit and then a 19-hour flight to dock with the International